Good morning, you handsome people. It is Friday yet again, and we've got a little 2013 Ford Fiesta. It has covered 30,000 miles, and we're going to be replacing the wet belt on it. Now, this car is a 1 litre Econetic, they call it, which is basically the EcoBoost without the boost. It hasn't got no turbine on it. But however, it's fairly simple to do. We haven't got as much stuff to take off. Now, first things first, what we're going to be doing is removing the negative on the battery. We're going to do it there on the chassis, and then we're going to move around, disconnect the oxygen sensors, and then we're going to remove the heat shield off the cat. Now we're going to move around now to removing the rocker cover, remove all the wiring harness. Make sure you're careful when you're unplugging everything. Get the coil packs out, inject the rail eyes, and then we can make a start on getting that rocker cover off. And there you go, that is the rocker cover off. When you're removing everything, make sure you're putting everything in nice neat piles, and all the nuts and bolts go with each component. It saves a lot of time when you're rebuilding it all back up. Right, let's get the vehicle in the air and we'll get this exhaust off. Now that I've got the vehicle in the air, as you can see that this exhaust has been repaired at some point, so it's going to make it fairly simple for us to remove because it has been joined there. And we've got 2 new nuts and bolts up there, which are going to come undone relatively easy. Now that exhaust is nice and free. We do have to remove the air conditioning pump itself, but to do that, remove the alternator belt. Self-explanatory really, tensioner there, put a pin in it, pull the belt off. But we all know by now that these Fiestas, because they haven't got an underbody guard, the bolts for the air conditioning pump are prone for seizing and snapping. So hopefully, if we take our time and work them back until we might be able to get them out. But if they feel as if they're going to snap, I'm not even going to carry on with it. I'm going to just remove degas the air conditioning system, remove the pipes off the pump, and remove the pump off with the sump at the same time. Well, I'm quite surprised really that that air conditioning pump, the bolts did come off, but rather than, I'm a firm believer of, if you make enough room for yourself, it's going to make the job a lot easier. Now what I've done, I have taken the air conditioning pump off completely, which is there, and do not worry, because I have degassed it, which the air conditioning machine is there. I'm just in the middle now of draining the oil out the sump. I've dropped the coolant out of it as well, and then once we finish draining that oil out, we're going to remove this sumperoonie. And there we have it, that sumperoonie is now off. Now it is rather clean, even the pickup is pretty clean in there, there's no fibres in there. I probably wouldn't expect it on a 30,000 mile engine, but you never ever know. Now once the sump is removed off, if I have a little look in the bottom there is a lot of black gunge in there. I should imagine that's the fibres off the belt are broken down, but I don't really know. I can't really call it on that one. But yeah, right, let's get this engine timed up. Now let's get this engine timed up. Now in the bottom of the crank there, like the old Fords, there's a pin that goes in at the back of the block. And once that is tight, I'll show you when we go back underneath. We're going to get our 21 now on the crank. I'm going to turn it over until that engine locks. Now that engine is locked. Now I have come into a little bit of a problem. I have done no end of EcoBoosts, as you can probably tell by all my videos that I do. Now I've never done a non-turbo one. Now these timing tools that lock the camshafts, they do not fit. As you can see, with that camshaft lobe, now the crank is locked. Now that timing tool does not fit on that inlet. It doesn't fit the camshaft lobe properly, or the exhaust. So what we're going to have to do is overcome it. I don't know how, but we are going to have to. Now this does look a little bit bodgery pokery, but it is going to work. As you can see, I've locked the camshafts at the back there with 2 21mm spanners and a pair of mole grips. And then this is where it gets interesting. You know the timing tool that locks the camshaft on the Vauxhalls? I've cut 2 notches in them. And if that, now if that slides on there perfectly, and I have lined it up and marked it, what's to say that that isn't going to work? It's going to be perfect. As long as everything lines up correctly, it's going to work perfect. Right, let's get this timing cover off. Now to get this timing cover off, we need to remove the crank pulley. Now these are stupidly tight. You need to lock the crank, remove the starter motor, put the locking tool in, make sure that everything is tight, and then we can get a great big bar then with a 21mm on the end and get that pulley off. Right, let's drop the car down now and get the timing cover off. Now that is the timing cover off. Now I do get asked quite a lot where I support the engine, and it is with a jack on the dry shaft bearing housing. Now when you remove this timing cover, get yourself a little bit of cardboard and put all your nuts and bolts and what have you in order, so you're not getting them mixed up, because they are all different lengths. Now let's get this belt on. That is one timing belt removed. Now it is in good condition for one of these. Like I said before, this vehicle has only done 30,000 miles. Now for the boring part of this job of getting everything nice and clean. And how I do it, I do get asked quite a bit how I clean them down, and it is with a Stanley knife, a wire brush on my drill, and lots of brake and clutch cleaner, and get them surfaces spotless. Now as you can see, I've put the new timing belt on. Everything now, as you can see, is absolutely spotless. It is like brand new. All we've got to do, we've also put a new oil pump belt on it as well. You must change that. The kits that I use are always from Ford. It's pointless buying aftermarket. Get it straight from Ford because they're just as cheap. Let's pull this pin out, and that belt is fully tensioned. Absolutely perfect. Now on this engine as well, now we've got everything nice and clean. It is also having a water pump as well because it is leaking. So we're going to get this chucked on. Now let's get this timing cover ready for installation. Now this little rubber O-ring here, you must replace it because you don't want to put that cover on and it leaks water. They're only a couple of quid anyway. Right, let's get the sealant on. What I'm using is BJ sealant. I put a little V in the tip of the tube, and as you're applying it, well, I'll show you in a second. It goes on a little bit like that, a nice even application, so you've got a good beading of it, and you know that it's gonna stop it leaking. Anyway, give that a couple of minutes now. It should always, whenever you put sealant on, leave it go so you get a little bit of a skin on it, and then push it on. Now that is the timing cover back on. Now I have already put the friction washer back inside there. You've got to put that on when you're replacing it. Now we have also got a new crankshaft bolt, and we do need, which one is it? That one there. That pin. If this isn't timed up properly, this car is never ever going to start. See that hole there? It lines through there, and it goes into the timing cover by there. If that's not lined up, this car will never ever ever start. And that is now that crankshaft bolt torqued up to the correct spec using the torque multiplier. And as you can see, our yellow lines on the flywheel and the bell gearbox housing, they are absolutely perfect. Let's move round now to the sump itself and make sure that every surface is spotless, even the block as well, and make sure that everything is beautiful. We're going to be doing the same principle as what we did before on the timing cover. A nice thick bead all the way around, leave it for a couple of minutes, and then offer it up and get it torqued up. Now I've got a little bit carried away. Everything now underneath the vehicle is back together. The exhaust back on, all the alternator, the air conditioning, the air conditioning pump, belt, everything is back together. But my homemade tool, locking tool, has done the job absolutely wonders. All I'm going to do now is get on the crank pulley and give it a couple of turns and make sure that everything lines back up. And as you can see, it's held everything absolutely perfect. Everything is aligned up. Can't go wrong. Can't go wrong. Now before we get on the key and give it a big starter Rooney, we're going to give it a brand new oil filter as well. Now before we get on the key and give it a big starter Rooney, what we're going to do is disconnect the coil packs, build the oil pressure up and the fuel pressure, so then when we do connect them up, it's going to go first flick of the key. Hopefully, well that's the plan. Now I'm happy with everything. We've got some fresh coolant in it. We're going to get on the key now. I'm going to give it a big starter Rooney. It's got two choices in it. It either does or it doesn't. Absolutely perfect, like a little Singer sewing machine. Now, I'm not going to leave this car running for too long, obviously, because I want the sealant to go off overnight. I'm just going to have it running for about 5 minutes, get a little bit of warmth in that engine, and make sure that we've got no leaks. But yeah, and there we have it. That is one little EcoBoost without the boost wet belt replacement with a Vauxhall Corsa timing plate. Anyway, let's get us in. All have a good weekend.